Uninvisible is a support podcast that provides information, ideas, suggestions, and experiences that deal squarely with medical issues that present unique advocacy issues for individuals. We do not provide medical advice of any kind. We do provide support, concepts, ideas, discussions, and information that you can use to make sure that you are being heard and that your concerns are being addressed. Please consult with your physician for any medical issue that you are facing, but we will be here for you along your journey. We welcome all comments about our episodes and, of course, the correction of any errors. Information and comments that you send to us are governed by our terms of service and privacy policy, which are available on our website located at www.uninvisiblepod.com. The opinions expressed by guests are their own and are not necessarily the opinion of Uninvisible or the show sponsors. Most of all, we welcome your stories and experiences to share with our community because without you, this community and the benefit it offers all of us would not exist. Any advertising that you may hear is accepted without regard to our editorial content. Of course, in the event that you are having a medical emergency of any kind, consult your physician or emergency services. Welcome to Uninvisible. I'm your host, Lauren Friedman, and I'm here with my guests to bring you info, insights, and inspiration for coping with, diagnosing, and treating invisible illness. We're here oversharing, so you don't have to struggle with invisibility anymore. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining us. I am here today with Chris Armstrong, who is the science liaison for the Open Medicine Foundation, or OMF, as some of you might know it. OMF is an organization that is working on building awareness and funding research into ME/CFS, which is myalgic encephalomyelitis, chronic fatigue syndrome. So, Chris, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you very much for having me on, Lauren.
Yeah, it's a total pleasure. So why don't we just start from the top and you can tell us about your work in research and how you came to OMF.
Okay, so I'll probably start everything at the beginning. I actually got into this area straight from a science undergraduate degree. I went into working as what would be the equivalent of a master's in the US, looking into ME/CFS at the time. And that really came as a project that had very little funding. It was more of a dreamed up project between two people actually who met on a tram, my supervisor and someone who was also working somewhere close to the
tram.
strangers on a tram indeed. And then they cooked together a project in regards to ME/CFS, which was looking at the gut bacteria actually. And trying to determine these gut bacterial differences between ME/CFS and healthy people, and then looking at maybe some of the compounds or what we call metabolites that are being produced by these bacteria and how they might be affecting people with
that. Makes a lot of sense because gut bacteria has so much to do with the root cause of so many chronic illnesses. So it's interesting that you've been looking into it with ME/CFS.
Yes. Well, my supervisor was a protein chemist, but the gentleman that he met was a microbiologist, and he'd been working in this area. He'd actually had a private lab looking into ME/CFS and other diseases. Actually, he was looking at doing. He pretty much would measure the amounts of bacteria and the types of bacteria in samples, in the stool samples, and from that would determine what we would call gut dysbiosis.
Wow.
So that was very early on in the day. That was 10 years ago. And
okay, so this was when you were like an undergrad student.
Yeah, well, this is just coming out. This is coming into what was equivalent of a master's. And that the gut dysbiosis actually sort of work has become bigger and bigger over the 10 years for sure. But also looking at the metabolites, which are these little compounds that everyone creates, what bacteria create. We use them for energy. We use them for everything. And you would probably know them as amino acids, sugars, lipids, fatty acids, all these little compounds. But for us, they're real molecules.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to measure. Yeah. And so that is actually my area. So my main area is to measure these little compounds in whatever different types of biofluids, so blood, urine, saliva, all these different type of areas in which we can get access to these fluids. And what they do is they tell you about the overall system of the body. And they are very complicated in the way that you try and, because they're very complex because they constantly changing. And they're constantly dynamic and working with each other in relation to what you as the person is doing or feeling, whether you've eaten, whether you're sleeping, whether you're exercising, they will change. And
So
they
it's hard
tell
to get
you,
like a baseline, even just for a typical healthy person.
yeah, it is tough to get a baseline, but because they're so sensitive, they'll tell you really things that are going on that within the body that might be most closely linked to symptoms. And so that as a area of research has actually been very new. It's only really come out, or it's been building probably over the last few decades, but it's only really become more popular in the last five to 10 years, actually.
Wow.
So yeah, it's a very new area of research, and that's become one of the big things for ME/CFS, because this is a condition where there is no known pathology. There is no known damage that can be measured within the individuals or that has been visualized within the individuals that have this disease. We just have a complex set of symptoms. And so that was the value of this type of research, is that usually you use metabolomics to characterize the pathology, but because it's so sensitive, so sensitive to just the general conditions of the body, it will tell you whether there's something wrong if you even haven't seen the pathology itself. So, and this has been one of the first consistent findings in this field. And
so this is sort of opening a door to potential treatments, possibly.
This is opening a door to, at the very initial, at the outset, really, to kind of maybe think whether we are finding some biomarkers, but also to really understanding the disease, because it gets taken for granted that a lot of these diseases that we get diagnosed is really based on the pathology that you see. A doctor will find that you're not making myelin, or your myelin is damaged, and you'll have lesions, or you'll have, there'll be problems with, tumors or growths that shouldn't be there, or you have different types of damage within the body. And part of this, of what we're trying to do, is determine how or where this issue is in ME/CFS patients, because we don't have any of that.
Yeah, I mean, and that seems to be one of the really frustrating things about having ME/CFS, or possibly having it, right, is that there's a lack of diagnostic structure, which you guys are trying to work on with these studies, but also a lack of treatment structure. Can you walk us through a little bit about what ME/CFS is for people who are listening and going, what are you talking about?
Yeah, so it's a complicated disorder. Was originally known, I guess, as myalgic encephalomyelitis, and probably the best way to understand it is to go back into time, into where it happened, because there have been reports of this condition for many, many years, for centuries. But the major reports kind of came out as outbreaks during the middle of the 19th century.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, this is a bit really unusual component of this disease, is that you can have outbreaks of it. And so what it really is something like a trigger or a trauma, or sometimes no trauma. But essentially what happens is the person gets to a state where they have significant levels of fatigue, significant issues with sleep, significant issues with pain and sensitivities.
And when you say significant issues,
sensitivities,
yeah, it's not just like someone's real tired, but it's like these people are no longer able to function as they normally would.
Yes, this is a loss of function, and the basis of the diagnosis is generally at least a minimum of 50% loss of function. And so then you have the main symptom of this disease is something called post-exertional malaise, which is after any type of exertion, mental, physical, stressful, you'll have a very significant dip into exacerbating your symptoms. And these will include significant headaches, inability to move, fatigue like you've never felt before, what patients refer to as brain fog, where they can't really find the words that they want to say. And so that is the most debilitating component of the disease itself, and one of the toughest things to organize and to try and for the research for the patients.
Thank you so much for tuning in. For the full episode, click the link below. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button to access future episodes. Turn on those notifications. Share this video if you enjoyed it, and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at UninvisiblePod.